Hello friends, welcome back to the shop and to the beginning of a new series on the restoration of this Royal Ascot Supreme. This is a pipe that I'm working on for Durham Duke, who's one of my YouTube subscribers. And this pipe has a very interesting history, both in terms of its manufacturing, but also in terms of the personal history it has for Durham Duke. So to begin with, it is a Royal Ascot Supreme. It's made in France, and the Ascots, the Royal Ascots, were made in France for Duncan, which was a British pipe manufacturer and distributor. Duncan was around for a very long time. They were started in 1899, and they continued to be a player in the British pipe world up until the 1990s. The Royal Ascot line in the U.S. was imported by Mastercraft, and we've talked about Mastercraft before. They're very intimately related to the Graybo story, and they were involved in marksman pipes as well. For a while, they actually coexisted with Graybo in the same facility, and ultimately were consumed by Graybo. But Mastercraft imported a lot of pipes from a lot of different manufacturers and distributed them, and that doesn't really make it any easier to put a date to this pipe because, you know, with Duncan being around from 1899, assuming it was imported by Mastercraft and not purchased in Britain, that would put it probably somewhere in the 1940s at the earliest, but it could be as late as the 1980s. So it's difficult to date, but certainly a part of pipe history, both in terms of French, British, and U.S. pipe history. So it's kind of neat in that way. In terms of its personal history, it's got a very nice story. And what Durham Duke has told me is that this is a pipe that he remembers his late father smoking. And he would like to, he came across it recently, and he would like to return it to service. But he could not find a stem. When he found the stummel, that's all that there was no stem. So he would like to sort of refinish the pipe and insert a new stem. And he originally contacted me about this back in sometime in the fall, I believe, of last year, and he asked me if I would be interested, and of course I was very interested in working on it. It's a great pipe and great story, but the problem was that Durham Duke is a 9mm filter user, and at the time I did not have the capability to really accurately drill and ream the stem to accept any filter, including a 9mm filter. And so I wanted to wait until I had that capability with the new metal lathe, and had worked out some of the bugs there and all. And Durham Duke was very patient with me as I went through that process, got everything working. Stayed in touch, and really, to be frank about it, he's become a friend. We've exchanged many emails, and I really enjoy talking with him, not just about this pipe, but about pipes and tobacco in general. So he's a good guy, and I'm really glad to have gotten to know him a bit better. So we will be putting an acrylic stem onto this pipe. He wanted to add a little bit of color, and we will be doing that. The acrylic blank that he's chosen is this guy here, which I know it's hard to see without it being polished up, but this is called Orange Black. It's going to be a really nice complement to the finish on this when it's done, because this is like a nice smoky orange color with lots of black detail running through it. So I think that's going to look really great. The finish itself on this pipe, the finish currently, well, let's take a closer look at the pipe. I don't think I've shown the stampings yet, so let's do that first as I talk about the finish. So here we see Royal Ascot Supreme, and on the opposite side we've got Algerian Briar made in France, consistent with it being a Duncan pipe made in France. So the finish on this, I'm fairly certain this is just a natural finish, so probably the pipe was carved, sanded, and then waxed and sent out like that. I don't think there's been a stain applied. If there was, it's very light. But the grain on this pipe is absolutely beautiful. It's some of the nicest grain I've seen. I mean, you've got this nice, gorgeous straight grain, lots of bird's eye on the bottom, coming through, some bird's eye on the side, and you get this little patch of of straight grain kind of coming down at an angle here, and it just provides so much interest. It's really a beautiful piece of briar. I don't see any actual fills on the pipe. There's a few spots that I'm a little questionable about, like there might be a fill here. If so, it's very well done. None of those awful pink things that we'd have to worry about. There's a few spots down here. I don't know if these are scratches or if these are defects in the briar, surface defects. Either way, I don't think it's going to be a problem. We're going to have to lightly sand that, but the contrast stain that we're planning on doing will hide that quite well if they are defects, and they're not anything that's going to impair the use of the pipe. In terms of color, I'm thinking a contrast stain on this and something like a black followed by a medium walnut. I want to really accentuate the grain on this pipe because it is so stunning. But the more I think about it with this black orange, another possibility, and I really have to think about this and maybe talk to Durham Duke again, would be to just go with a very dark walnut counter stain and then leave the non-grain areas natural. And that would accentuate the grain just as much as the other combination, be a bit more faithful to the original, and I think would go very well with it, sort of help highlight the oranges in this rod of acrylic. So we'll see what we got there. The pipe itself is in fantastic shape. It's very obvious that this was well cared for. It does not need to be reamed at all. There's a few cracks in the cake, so I might lightly sand the cake a bit just to help smooth that out, but otherwise it's in fantastic shape. The airway is very, very clean, basically ready to be smoked. There's no need to do any work at all on the internals here. The stamping is a little bit light, so I want to avoid doing any significant sanding as much as possible. So what I will do is I'll use the acetone method to remove the finish here. Again, I don't think there's any stain to remove, so it's just a matter of cutting through that wax and getting any surface dirt and whatnot off of the pipe before we restain it. And we will then do the contrast staining method that I've described, and then we need to fit a stem. And actually that's what we're going to start with, because when fitting a stem to a pipe, if you're planning on refinishing the pipe, it's always a good idea to do the stem first, because there's some chance that as you're sanding the stem or whatnot, you might accidentally sand into the finish a little bit. So it's not anything that would be a problem in terms of the shape or the integrity of the briar or anything, but it will ruin the finish and you'll wind up having to refinish the pipe. So we'll start with the stem, we'll get that fitted properly and basically finished, and then the next thing we'll do is work on the stumble itself. So that's the plan. I'm thinking that this is probably going to be a total of 3 videos for this project. In the next video we'll work on the stem, and in the final video we will work on the stumble and bring everything together for the final product. So should be coming together pretty quickly. I'm really excited to finally be working on this for Durham Duke, and I hope you're interested in seeing this as the project progresses. So if you're a subscriber, thank you very much for that. And if you're not a subscriber and you'd like to follow this project along, please go ahead and click the subscribe button. It'll allow you to be notified when the next installment happens. As always, I really appreciate any likes, comments, questions, suggestions. They're all welcome. The reason I do this is to interact with you all, so hearing your feedback really does make my day. So with that, we will get to work on this, and until next time, I'll look forward to talking to you all again very soon. Goodbye now.